And gentlemen, let's bring the Mount Pleasant Village Board meeting to order, January 23rd, 2023, 6 p.m. And I'll need a roll call.
Hewitt?
Here.
Anastasio?
Here.
Washburn?
Here.
Doxey?
Here.
DeGroot?
He's here. Trustee Batcha and Trustee Clausen are excused. So from here we go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, from here we move to the presentation of the RCEDC 2022 year-end report. We've got a gaggle of RCEDC types here. At your pleasure.
Hello? Okay. Hello, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening and go over some of our accomplishments from 2022. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jordan Brown. I'm with the Racine County Economic Development Corporation, and I'm also joined with two of my colleagues, Laura Millian and Cassandra Hathaway. And we want to just give a brief overview of what our activities were. I did distribute a dashboard from what we've accomplished. That goes into further detail with further detail in numbers and gets a little bit more granular, but I wanted to go through a couple slides and hit some of the high notes and help you have an understanding of what we've done this past year. So for those of you that don't know what we do, we are the chief economic development organization for Racine County and our contract communities, which the Village of Mount Pleasant is one of them. Our mission statement is really just to promote job growth and increase tax base inside of Racine County and the Village of Mount Pleasant. We accomplish this through three different divisions. The business retention and expansion, which is where I primarily work in. This is a lot of outreach to existing businesses, but also what I do is try to bring new businesses into the area. We do this through different outreach and marketing programs. We harbor a lot of data that a lot of companies use to make site selection decisions, as well as working through entitlement processes as well, and local, state, and state incentive, and working through the incentive negotiation. Another division is under the trade name Business Lending Partners. This is essentially the division of our organization that acts as a small bank. This is where low interest financing loans, matching grants come from, as well as we are a SBA 504 lender, which makes our organization relatively unique. The last division would be the Greater Racine County Initiative. Talent and workforce has been increasingly an issue in economic development, and we wanted to address this by creating this initiative. So this is a lot of employee recruitment and support, job boards, educational partnerships, workforce partnerships, a lot of sharing of information between HR executives locally. So getting into some of our accomplishments, we assisted 107 businesses this year. That resulted in $289 million in private investment and $124.8 million in construction investment. I mentioned that we do a lot of work with small businesses. Some of the activities that we took under this year were 343 technical assists. That includes everything from program information to partnering with other partner organizations, referrals, as well as things like the 115 letters for the Main Street Bounce Back program. So we were references to those people applying for that program. We also completed 27 Racine County matching grants, 26 CDBGCV grants, I got that, which is a program that has expired this year. And then 7 community matching grants, and this is going to be in Burlington, Sturdivant, and Union Grove. Continuing on with some of the highlights and trends that we see in small business loans, we did 38 total loans in 2022. With $2.8 million in Racine County, and our SBA program with $15 million, which is also Racine County and outside of Racine County. Getting into an area that I really focus in is the business industrial attraction. Racine County is very lucky because our market's very hot right now. In Q3 2022, there was 1.23 million square feet of industrial under construction, while we still had a vacancy rate of 3.6%. So we're building a lot, or the developers are building a lot, but we're also able to absorb this product. So we're in a very good situation when it comes to that. Some of the investments that you might be familiar with are the Hillwood project that was in the village of Mount Pleasant, right next to SEDA, as well as Ashley Capital's project that is under construction right now in just north of Highway 11, and HSA on Highway 20 as well too. So I wanted to focus on two projects that we did at RCEDC. Otero, which many of you might be familiar with because it is in the village of Mount Pleasant. It was what we used to call the Opus Building, or Foxconn occupied it for some time as well too. This is a business that is new to Racine County, relocation, which would result in 115 full-time equivalent jobs at the location, as well as $40 million of significant tenant improvements. Another example of a industrial business growth that we've worked on, and this is a retention project that Laura worked on very intimately. Summit Packaging inside the city of Racine. This expansion project resulted in 145 new jobs, as well as $25 million in investment. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and she'll continue the remainder of the presentation. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Jordan. So just continuing on, as we're bringing new businesses in, residential is really important to our community, especially as we're looking to attract additional individuals to work at our businesses. So we need additional places for our talent. So we're tracking about 3,600 units that are under construction or complete since we started really trying to recruit business or new developers to the community for housing. So we've got information on our website, and I also shared that with the board after our last discussion with you. Two projects I wanted to highlight. Waterford Lofts is in the village of Waterford. They're undertaking a mixed-use project, which has 12 condo units and received a grant from WEDC. And then we work with the village of Caledonia with Cornerstone Development to bring in a new single-family development on land that the village owned. While those projects are small, they're still important to those communities and important to our efforts to attract new talent to our area. Talent attraction, as Jordan mentioned, is something that we find is very important and is a piece that Cassandra is really focused on. Greater Racine County was an initiative that we put together in 2018 and created greaterracinecounty.com as the website. We're in process of doing some updates. We created a new job board or have a new job board platform to make it easier for our businesses to use that, and are doing some promotions around that to make people aware of it in Racine County as well as outside of the community. One of the things that we did this year, as we've talked to businesses, many of our HR representatives at our businesses don't necessarily live in our communities, and so we wanted to make sure that they were aware of what assets we have here. So we did a familiarization tour, which was very successful. We had 27 HR reps join us, and we got to show everything from the city of Racine to the high schools, our housing availability and recreation opportunities. Just really an important element of being able to showcase our community and be able to attract talent so our businesses can better talk about our community as a place that people want to live and work. Another element around talent attraction is talking with our higher ed institutions about retention of young talent. So I actually had a conversation today with our higher ed institutions, being UW Parkside, Carthage, and Gateway Technical College. What can we do to retain the talent that's coming to our universities and our colleges? Not only those that are local, we certainly want to keep them or attract them back to our community for the businesses that are here, but what about those individuals that are coming from outside of the area? What can we do to introduce them to our community and be able to showcase what's available here? So we're continuing to have those conversations and expect to be able to actually implement some activities and initiatives around that this year. And then finally, the two other elements I want to highlight are around just our promotion of Racine County as a great place to live and work. We have a partnership with the manufacturers that we're doing an ad campaign in Northern Illinois. We're excited to be able to continue that initiative because of a grant from WEDC, so we'll be doing that continuing into 23. And then we want to thank the Mount Pleasant Tourism Commission for their investment in us and doing some videos as well as a relocation guide. The 3 videos that we were able to do, we did a feature on Corey Sebastian, which is a business, she's a business owner in Caledonia, talking about her view of living in Racine County, as well as being a business owner, and then just promoting the different assets in terms of water and then our beer scene here in the community. So those are great assets that we have going forward. So overall in Mount Pleasant, we assisted 21 businesses. 4 of those were loans, assisting with asset purchases, equipment, and buildings. And then we had 17 grants between our Community Development Block Grant CV program, which is a program that was specific to helping businesses affected by COVID, as well as the Racine County Matching Grant, which is a program that's available on an annual basis as a result of an allocation from Racine County. So with that, I will open it up to any questions you may have about our accomplishments in 2022.
Don't have any.
What can we look forward to this year?
This year. So we a lot of that same work will continue on in 2023. Very excited about some of the stuff we're doing in the talent area. We have FAM tours, familiarization tours planned for Eastern Racine County and Western Racine County, or at least in process of doing that. Planning to do some engagement opportunities with interns working at our businesses. So we're hearing from employers that they have interns and they are certainly showcasing opportunities and fun events up in Milwaukee and things. We want to do some things in our own community. So those will continue forward. We've got continue to have conversations with prospects that are very interested in some of those spec buildings that Jordan mentioned. And we've got businesses or developers who are going forward with housing. So continuing to have lots of conversations around that. We are keeping a close eye on, interest rates and inflation on, how that's affecting businesses. So continuing to have conversations with businesses to understand how they're affected by current economic conditions. We're still seeing businesses that are continuing to hire, maybe not as quickly as they were previously, but they still have open positions. So talent is super important to our businesses.
Thank you.
Just a comment, Laura, in looking over the report you've given us, you certainly have been busy. When you look at many of your annual goals versus your percent of target, you're well over 100%, 130%, 289% in terms of reaching some of those goals. So we know you're busy, and we can see what you're doing for our community, and we thank you very much for that leadership.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the partnership with the village.
Yeah, this is a collaboration that's worked really well over the years, and you're our eyes and ears as far as development potential and getting the parties together. Your involvement with the county as well. County is always a partner when we go into these kinds of things. So we appreciate your work, and we look forward to more good news as you continue to beat the bushes for giving people all the right reasons to move to Racine County, more specifically Mount Pleasant, to live, work, and raise their families.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other thoughts? Okay. I think we're good, Laura, Jordan, Cassandra. Thank you very much. Their contract for approval is on the consent agenda, and so we can vote that through, unless somebody wanted to pull it off the consent agenda and make them sweat a little bit. So we'll let you think about that. But first off, we need to move to public comment. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments on any matter. Please listen for the president to recognize you. State your name and address. For the public record, comments are limited to 3 minutes. I have nobody signed up. Clerk says nobody signed up. So Anybody out there wishing to speak publicly on any matter? Answer is no. So we'll move on from public comment, and we'll go to the consent agenda. Trustee Hewitt, there's some changes made to the consent
Yes,
agenda.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the items adopted for the consent agenda with the exception of F2, which will be taken up at a future date.
Second.
So I hear a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So that motion carries. So let's move down to new business. We have a public hearing. This is regarding a couple of different zoning maps and such things. Public hearing number 1. We have a zoning map amendment for 3528 Meacham Road. The following rules apply to this public hearing, and then the next public hearing a little further in our agenda relating to another zoning map amendment. If you wish to speak regarding this particular item, please fill out a public hearing form, which you can find at the table near the entrance. Once recognized, speakers should come to the podium and identify themselves with their name and address. Please speak clearly into the microphone. Speakers must direct all discussions towards the board. I will not allow interchange between members of the audience and the speaker. Please do not interfere with nor interject comments while another person has the floor. And please keep all comments on the particular item before the board and no longer than 5 minutes. And finally, please turn off or mute all electronic devices. Regarding the zoning map amendment for 3528 Meacham Road, Mr. Schultz.
Mr. President, trustees, the applicant applied to amend the zoning map from RH1 to B2. The map amendment would allow the legal division of the front and back office buildings. The applicant wishes to sell one of the buildings separately from the other on the property. The application follows the comprehensive plan. The village does not have an adopted plan for local planning area 19. The application needs B2 lot and building regulations. In terms of fiscal impact, the lands contained within the application do not lie within any tax incremental district. There's no request for tax incremental financing assistance. The zoning map amendment should not affect the assessed value of the property. The property is fully developed. This is just to zone it appropriately. The applicant must submit one of the land division applications if they wish to legally split the property for the village board if you all approve this zoning map amendment. So this, depending on how they wish to split the property, whether by land division or by condo, is probably not the last time you'll see this property. With that, we have no recommended conditions, and both the village staff and the plan commission recommend approval.
Any quick thoughts from the board?
Well, is this the public hearing?
Yes. But I will allow you a quick word.
Okay. I wasn't sure when it would be appropriate, Mr. President. I'm just curious.
You can wait until we get to the actual business.
I was
item for
thinking that
approval.
was the way to appropriately go.
Okay, we can do that. Again, I've got nobody signed up to speak on this particular item, but I'll poll the community out there. Anybody wishes to speak on this particular matter, Ordinance 1-2023, ZMA 22-15, 3528 Meacham Road. Going twice. Not hearing from anybody in the public, we can close the public hearing on this particular business item. And then as Trustee Washburn indicated, we'll move on to consideration of Ordinance 1-2023 zoning map amendment for 3528 Meacham Road. Zoning map amendment ZMA 22-15.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve Ordinance 1-2023 zoning map amendment for 3528 Meacham Road, application ZMA 22-15.
Second?
So I hear a motion by Hewitt, seconded by Washburn. Trustee Washburn.
The only question, Mr. President, to staff, to Sam, in looking at this parcel and knowing their desire is to potentially divide it, how are they gonna have to have a private driveway access or agreement, or?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes the most sense in this property's circumstance is to likely sell it via condominium. So condo plat the buildings off, share the shared parking areas in between the two buildings, have a private access drive that they share both maintenance responsibilities and ownership of, and then they can sell off one of the two buildings. So I think that'd be the cleanest one. You know, they could go through a way to try to, you know, divide the property in a weird way and share access of the drive, but that creates a flag lot, and that's not our favorite thing. So typically the cleanest now and in the long run for maintenance obligations will be to go condo plat.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think then the obligation for future maintenance is more clear.
Yeah.
Driveway, private driveway access agreements, even though I have been known to come into boards for permission for them, they're problematic over time, so, thank you, Sam, that was all I had.
Any other thoughts? Okay, good. So in the matter of ordinance 1-2023 and zoning map amendment ZMA 22-15, the motion is to approve it, and roll call, please.
Hewitt?
Aye.
Anastasio?
Aye.
Washburn?
Aye.
Doxy?
Aye.
DeGroot?
I say aye. Motion carries, approved. So now let's jump down into another public hearing, and this is regarding ordinance 2-2023, which is a zoning map amendment for 1821 East Frontage Road, zoning map amendment ZMA 22-16, development plan DP 22-1. And the rules that I read for the previous public hearing apply to this hearing as well. Back to Mr. Schultz.
Mr. President, Village Trustees, the applicant applied to amend the zoning map from M2 to M3. The parcel is currently split zoned both M2 and M3. Per the ordinances for existing and proposed uses and structures, the more restrictive provisions of the applicable zoning districts apply to the entire parcel, except when one base zoning district applies to at least 75% of the total parcel area and the remainder of the parcel is less than 10,000 square feet in area. The regulations of the zoning district that applies to the larger portion of the parcel applies to the entire parcel. Neither base district applies to at least 75% of the parcel area, so the most restrictive zoning district, M2, applies. The asphalt plant was previously allowed as a temporary conditional use, which is set to expire in 2023. The zoning code no longer has the applicable temporary conditional use allowances, so the applicant must now apply for permanent use under the applicable M3 zoning district. The map amendment would allow the permanent establishment of the existing temporary asphalt plant. One of the overall goals of the 2020 zoning code rewrite was to steer the village away from unnecessary and habitual discretionary reviews, especially those that were perfunctory in nature. This conditional use was renewed for 2 more 3-year terms after its first temporary conditional use approval. The village staff and the plan commission, after some discussion, doesn't think that any use that's present for 9 years would be considered as temporary by village residents. So requiring a permanent approval process at this point is proof that our 2020 code rewrite is working as intended. Ultimately, we found that this approach has saved time for staff officials and has also saved developers time and money, and as an added note, also provides greater clarity for village residents when going through an approval process. The application follows the industrial business designation from the land use element of the comp plan. The village does not have an adopted plan for local planning area 10. Neither the master bicycle plan nor the park and open space plan include any recommendations for this specific parcel. If you read your executive summary, as I get through the background, it's a pretty lengthy one. This is a development plan, an M3 rezone process, which is not something that we do pretty frequently. So a lot of the executive summary is us stating the code verbatim and then kind of doing a call and response in it so you can all follow the logic that the village staff went through when we were reviewing this application. I'll say from reading you every section of the ordinance and our response to it and just hit the highlights. And then if you have any questions for me, please feel free to answer. But essentially they're going from M2 to M3. What is required as part of that is they submit a development plan that has a couple key components. They did submit an operational plan, restoration plan, and performance guarantees acknowledgement, which addresses those areas. The village staff recommend that the village board require the applicant to update the operations plan to include a statement that they shall follow the lot and building regulations of the M2 district within the zoning ordinance. The M3 district is just set by this process, all the bulk standards, so setbacks, height limits, things like that. Our recommendation is that they just follow the M2 district, which are most of its neighboring property. Additionally, the village staff recommend the village board require the applicant to meet the village-wide regulations stated within Article 400 of the zoning chapter. Our discussion later on in the executive summary describes the effects of the village-wide regulations would have on a subsequent site plan review. But ultimately what it does is make them update their site lighting a little bit, update some of their on-site parking, and add a little bit of landscaping around the edges for additional screening areas, and perhaps a few trees within the interior of the site. The village staff do not believe the village needs any formal monetary guarantees because the application, while zoned M3 and therefore subject to the zoning district guidelines of the M3 district, does not include any extractive uses that we intended the performance guarantees of the zoning chapter to apply to. So in this case, you know, the M3 district is written in part if someone applies to put in a quarry or some sort of mining operation. They're not planning to do any excavation activities or anything like that. So requiring them to have a rolling monetary obligation on the property seems a little bit excessive in this case. They did give us a development agreement performance guarantee that they intend to record against the property that would state that they would have to remove their asphalt equipment from the property if they were to cease operations in the future. So the site would eventually go back to the gravel lot that it was before they started their temporary use out there. The property does have direct access to the East Frontage Road, and the proposed operation should not have a negative impact on the adequacy, safety, or efficiency of the East Frontage Road's traffic. This is a unique circumstance for a rezone in that they've basically been out there almost 10 years as it is. So we've been able to look at their existing operations and really judge, you know, have we received a lot of complaints? Have they had any issues with traffic or anything like that? In a large part, we haven't seen any issues. The operation does not require a traffic impact analysis. And like I said, it doesn't include any extractive uses, therefore would have little impact on soil erosion. The Public Works Department would still need to review any changes to site grading or drainage. And the applications do not have any proposed uses which would practically prohibit the possibility of site restoration or future use as industrial zoned interstate adjacent land. So if they were to get up and leave, this property would not be worse off down the road. Someone would still be able to come in and develop additional industrial uses out there without any, you know, environmental issues or anything else that they caused. Skipping ahead through the use section to the village-wide regulations section, they'll need to come back with a site plan that the Plan Commission will review. Our recommendation is that they just follow the general landscaping and screening sections of the ordinance, which are pretty specific in requiring different options of screening around the edge of the property, as well as making sure that the outdoor lighting, parking, and access are all updated per the village spec, as well as their fences and walls, intersection visibility, signage, things like that. So what we're saying is this isn't that crazy of a case. It's not a big quarry or anything like that. So we think it's totally adequate that they just follow the general outdoor work area screening requirements of the code. In terms of performance standards, all activities that emit any odorous matter of such nature or quantity to be offensive, obnoxious, or unhealthful outside the premises of such activity are prohibited. The guide for determining odor measurement and control is in the Wisconsin Administrative Code. Generally, this is regulated by the DNR. So if someone came to you as a trustee and said, did they go through an environmental impact statement or local environmental permitting, that's handled at the state level for operations here. The village staff have received complaints from an employee of the adjacent Honda dealership during the earlier temporary license period under which the asphalt plant ran. The village staff directed that person to file a municipal complaint and to file a complaint specified under ordinance with the DNR. We don't believe that the person ever filed either complaint. However, we still acknowledge that the potential for odor issues from an asphalt plant. There are several hotels within a half-mile north of the site which could have effects on tourism if the odors are not mitigated. In their operational plan, we wanted to bring specific attention to their statement, which says the facility is currently permitted by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and shall remain compliant with all OSHA, DNR, and EPA environmental safety requirements. In addition to these requirements, Stark will also install an automated system that will inject an asphalt odor suppressant into each load of asphalt cement that gets delivered to the facility. Also, the applicant is here if you have any questions about that. I don't want to answer any questions about their odor suppression system. I'll let them speak for that directly. Moving on, they followed all of the administrative and procedural aspects of the code, which in this case are a little bit complicated. Finally, for a fiscal impact, the property does not lie within a tax incremental district, nor did the applicant request any financing aid. The parcel does lie next to TIDs 1, 4, and 5, and is in those TIDs infrastructure expenditure zone. The use currently exists as an improved temporary use, thus the existing property assessment is likely indicative of the zoning map amendment, and it should not affect the assessed value of the property. The property currently has an assessed value of about $1.35 million and is about 9 acres. That equates to about $150,000 an acre. This value lies below the village minimum target of $1 million an acre. However, intensive industrial uses often have lower values per acre than residential, commercial, or indoor-focused industrial uses, as they have relatively few structures and take up larger amounts of land. Heavy outdoor industrial use has been shown to depress land values of nearby incompatible land uses such as residential or retail commercial. However, those same effects also occur within the immediate vicinity of interstate highways, which is present at this location. Therefore, the village staff believe the value per acre is typical of the use. Also to note, the East Frontage Road is owned by the Department of Transportation and maintained through agreement with Racine County. So finally, this is a legislative action. It's in your purview to weigh this land use request and the negative externalities versus the potential opportunity loss of nearby development in tax districts that are adjacent. With all of that, the village staff and the Plan Commission recommend that the conditions contained within the endnotes for approval, I highlighted those earlier, and both the village staff and the Plan Commission recommend the village board approve Ordinance 2-2023. That was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions now or later on. And like I said, Carl from Stark Asphalt is here to answer any questions on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Sam, for the lengthy presentation. And I'm sure that the board will have some questions, but we'll get to that business item. First, I'm mindful that we're still in the middle of a public hearing, and this would be the part where I invite the public to comment on this matter. I have nobody signed up for this. The clerk has nothing for me either. Anybody wishing to speak publicly on this? I hear nobody. So I can close the public comment part of this because we've met our statutory obligation to entertain public comment on this kind of issue. So I can close the public hearing at that point, and from there we can move on to the next item, which is item D, consideration of ordinance 2-2023, zoning map amendment for 1821 East Frontage Road, zoning map amendment ZMA 22-16, and development plan DP 22-1.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve ordinance 2-2023 zoning map amendment for 1821 East Frontage Road, application ZMA-2216, and Development Plan DP 22-1.
So I hear a motion by Hewitt, seconded by Doxey. Thoughts from the board?
Sam, I just had a couple of questions. Number one, I guess, what I see in this is really, we've talked about this in the past, that we have all these conditional uses out there that have 2-year time limits or no specific time limits, or they're just very difficult to manage and to track. And you see people that have gone on for years and years and, not even realizing they were in place in the old days. So I see this as a great way for Stark to now consider it a permanent use and change the zoning until such time as they choose not to do business there. So I think that's a really good way of handling this in the future. And I do have a question for Carl. You said his name was. Are you planning on expanding your capacity there at all, or do you own more than the 10 acres, the 9 acres that are there?
Do I need to state my name and address?
If you would.
Yes. Carl Johnson, Stark Payment Corporation, 1821 East Frontage Road. To answer your question, we are currently a tenant at that facility. We do not own the parcel. We are applying on behalf and with the authority granted by the owner, Tom Rybar. So at this time, we are not planning any expansion. We are planning to run the operation as it has run for the past 9 years.
I would like it to expand. We need more asphalt here in the area, Carl.
We're-
I've had a tough time with that this year, so.
We're doing the best we can to be as competitive as possible, and quite honestly, the best way to expand an asphalt plant is actually to increase the number of silos, but we have a height restriction. So we actually went out and bought specialty silos that met the village's height restriction so that we could still increase our productivity while maintaining compliance with any applicable village ordinances.
We appreciate that. We like low silos when it comes to an asphalt plant.
No
Right.
problem.
Right.
Particularly because of the airport across the road on the other side.
I can certainly understand that, yes.
I was just curious. We're
Sure.
glad to have you here, and, that's been a big deal. So thank you so much for answering my question.
No problem.
Go ahead.
I just want a clarification from Sam, I guess. In our packet, all of these amendments or provisions that he has to meet, is that like from page 26 through 28, kind of in that, like Article 400, like 420 parking and access, 425 outdoor lighting? Those are all the things that have to be done in order to meet the requirements?
Correct. They would need to follow those ordinances existing in the code. So if page, 9 of this individual packet, but it's at the end of the executive summary, you can see the end notes. We only requested, and the Plan Commission recommended, the 3 changes to the chapter, which are related to screening, the Article 400 things that you just mentioned, as well as setting the lot and building regulations for the parcel equal to the M2 district. This is one of those circumstances with this development plan where you are approving this specific application and use. If they'd ever like to change the use on the property or do anything else with it, they would need to come back and amend this development plan with the village board. So this is pretty specific. This isn't granting them authority. There was a question at the Plan Commission saying someone could come in and, add a different M3 use out there, or, mine the front half of the property or something like that. That is not allowed. They are really boxed in this case, and that's very unique to the most intense industrial district we have.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's another good reason for taking it out of the CUP and putting it into the zoning district, because we do have more teeth in it for us.
I agree. I think this is a circumstance where the code was written and it's functioning in a way where you're being asked to make a decision for or against. And that's, you're considering everything as a part of the application, and then it's, it's kind of done after that. We set the guidelines, and then they have to just go out and meet them. So it's not like this should be back in front of you 9 times or anything like that. It should be a pretty clear-cut process from here on out.
And Sam, I believe you covered this in your lengthy presentation, but just again, we're changing them from a finger quote temporary 9-year project plan into a more permanent structure and solution. But along with that, there are things that will probably be needed to do to gussy it up, dress it up, and deal with some of the aesthetics around it. And I just wanted to cover that again.
Correct, yeah, mostly in relation to the landscaping and screening around the west, north, and east portions of the property, which would be kind of adjacent to all of the non-contiguous portions. Tom Rybar owns the properties to the south that kind of flow into this one. So there wouldn't be any landscaper or screening on the south side, but the other sides facing the frontage road and facing the Honda dealership will likely need to be updated a little bit. There is some screening out there already, so we'll try to work with the applicant to include what's already out there, and any efficiencies that we can find that meet the ordinance, we'll work with them on that. But there are likely some areas that will need to be updated. And that's the big part of kind of they applied to more or less use the property as it has been. And as part of making this permanent, we thought it wise to take care of some of that landscaping and screening now.
That's something that'll probably make your Honda neighbors a little happier too.
Let's hope so.
It all depends on the direction the wind's blowing. I live next to a lift station. I can assure you that it's all in the direction of the wind.
Good. Okay, so regarding the motion, regarding ordinance 2-2023 and ZMA 22-16 and the development plan DP 22-1, roll call, please.
Hewitt.
Aye.
Anastasio.
Aye.
Washburn.
Aye.
Doxy.
Aye.
DeGroot.
Aye, that motion carries. So from here, we need to go into a closed session, so I need somebody to read that motion.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to convene into closed session per Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parens 1, parens G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, specifically Polda versus the Village of Mount Pleasant, Racine County case number 2020C as in cat, V as in Victor 1183, and Harmon et al. Versus Village of Mount Pleasant, Racine County case number 2020C as in cat, V as in Victor 1247.
Second.
So I hear a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Hewitt.
Aye.
Anastasio.
Aye.
Washburn.
Aye.
Doxy.
Aye.
DeGroot.
Aye. So the village is in closed session. Figure maybe 15, 20 minutes, I'm thinking. Let's have a motion to go back into open.
Mr. President, I move to reconvene into open.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The village is back in open session. We've got a couple of motions that we're going to make regarding the closed session business that we undertook.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to enter into a settlement agreement with Mary Lynn Polda in case number 2020 CV1183 for $136,300 as additional compensation to complete the acquisition of the subject property.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Discussion? Claude, if you could, huh? Okay. Okay. So, in the matter of this motion, roll call, please.
Hewitt.
Aye.
Anastasio.
Aye.
Washburn.
Aye.
Doxy.
Aye.
DeGroot.
Aye, that motion carries. And we've got one more.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to enter into a settlement agreement with W. Thompson Harmon et al. In case number 2020 CV1247 for $240,000 as additional compensation to complete the acquisition of the subject property.
Second.
So I hear a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Hewitt.
Aye.
Anastasio.
Aye.
Washburn.
Aye.
Doxy.
Aye.
DeGroot.
Aye, that motion carries. One last motion.
May we adjourn?
Second.
I hear a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Village is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.